Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shilbanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tudubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, welcome to the study of the third verse of this most glorious nectar of instruction, Shri Upadeshamrita. So, last week we discussed this overarching principle of trying to live simply and think highly. By living simply, finding ways to uncomplicate our lives, it allows us to spend more time and energy thinking about the higher purposes of life. We said our two most precious resources are time and our intelligence. And we should use both very, very intelligently. Use both very wisely, understanding that time is very precious and our intelligence is very, very rare gift we have been given. So this concept of living simply, high thinking, at first seems like an austerity. But actually, as we begin to experience it, we find it is the path to happiness and peace. The more we simplify our life, the better we get. So last week we talked about the 6 impediments that destroy, annihilate, vanquish our bhakti. And they were maybe a little bit hard-hitting to the heart, a little deep and heavy. And discussing with a few of you afterwards, it was nice to kind of share, this overindulging atyahara. We have to remember again, it's a very individual thing. What is excessive for one may not be excessive for another. And so we should not compare and contrast, but instead think about it from an internal perspective, introspectively. What is it that I can do to minimize my consumption, to minimize my needs so that I can limit my need for over-endeavor. Right? But remember, someone who may be taking cold showers and wearing no shoes in the street and eating only once a day, that may be austere or may be a sign of trying to show one's great progress. So do not, begin to get into this comparison game. Oh, you ate 3 chapatis, I only ate 2. Last week we were doing extra atyahara by consuming wonderful prasadam at the temple. But remember, it is about an individual, and we make progress. So, day to day, week to week, month to month, think about it. What I can do to minimize and simplify my life. Because that will reduce my over-endeavor and thus give me time to over-endeavor in Krishna consciousness. Right? And over-endeavoring doesn't mean that we don't endeavor. It means we don't endeavor for sense gratification. Srila Prabhupada rested 2 hours a day. He endeavored 22 hours a day in the service of Krishna. So in bhakti, that doesn't mean that we become lazy, inertia, we do nothing. Instead, we become extraordinarily enthusiastic. So this over-endeavor speaks about endeavoring for sense gratification. So that is just a quick synopsis of what we discussed last week. So with last week's verse maybe being a little heavy, this week's verse is very encouraging. Rupa Goswami is now saying, let me give you the keys to success, the golden keys to success. How to make rapid advancement in devotional service. Right? We all are thinking, sometimes how I can make this advancement, how I can move forward. Right? So he says, prasiddhyati, assured success. Not hopeful success, not possible success. He says assured success. How to find that? Right? So, the ultimate key is to detach from all of our material engagements and to attach to bhakti. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, speaks of the story of the wedding party who is trying to reach the destination by boarding a boat. And while the boatman is rowing all night, very ferociously, very enthusiastically, they have not made any progress because he did not untie the boat from the shore, from the tree that it was tied to. So, practicing Krishna consciousness while maintaining our material attachments is kind of like rowing a boat while it's tied to the shore. You're not going to go anywhere. So we'll see that this is the key to our success. So the 6 keys to assured success: to be enthusiastic, to endeavor confidently, being patient, following the principles, avoiding bad association, and following in the footsteps. And I just wanted to read the verse. So there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. Being enthusiastic. 2, endeavoring with confidence. 3, being patient. 4, acting according to regular principles, such as Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Shmaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 undoubtedly assure the complete success of devotional service. So Rupa Goswami is saying that they undoubtedly assure complete success. Boy, what better gift we could be given than the roadmap to undoubtedly assuring our complete success. Right? So let us now begin to dig into this beautiful purport. This is one of the most wonderful purports of Srila Prabhupada. You can read this over and over again, and it is so inspiring. So, in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the 9 processes of bhakti. These 9 processes of devotional service, they cultivate bhakti within us. Prahlad Maharaj explained these as the best of what he had learned from his schooling, much to the dismay of his father, Hiranyakashipu. But we see that the first of the 9 processes is hearing, Shabda Praman. And why is hearing so important? Well, we acquire knowledge by hearing. Otherwise, we are left to speculate, to try to figure it out on our own. And you think so many things that we've learned in life, we learn by hearing. We learned about Mount Everest by hearing about it. We learned about, the the islands in the remote Pacific Rim by hearing about it. We haven't even seen it maybe ourselves, but we know about it because we have heard. So hearing is extraordinarily important in our process of bhakti. And reading Srila Prabhupada's books is one of the most potent ways to hear. Though it may not seem obvious, wait a minute, I'm reading, that's not hearing. Because Srila Prabhupada was speaking these purports. And now by reading them, it is as if we are hearing directly from Srila Prabhupada. How many of us would like to have a one-on-one conversation with Srila Prabhupada? Well, if you do, pick up one of Prabhupada's books and read it. Because that is a one-on-one conversation with Srila Prabhupada. So hearing is very important, but hearing from the right source is of utmost importance. And Prabhupada comments about hearing from Guru is critical to the path of devotional service. We're going to see repeatedly, over and over and over again, the importance of Guru in our practice of devotional service. And Prabhupada quotes this verse, Tadvidi paripatena pariprashnena sevya putdekshantite gyanam gyaninas tatadarshina. We must approach the spiritual master. We must hear from them, inquire from them, render service very submissively, in a humble mood. Right? So to understand this transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. That is the only means. Our own mental speculation, our own analysis of what we see, our own I think, will not yield assured success. So this hearing from a spiritual master is most important. And remember, when we hear, that fuels our attraction. If somebody tells me and I hear how wonderful the beaches are in Hawaii, how wonderful the air and water is, and how wonderful the activities, I hear about all this, what happens naturally within me? I become attracted to this place of Hawaii. Like that, when I hear about Krishna, I hear about his pastimes, his forms, his qualities, it fuels my attraction. When I have attraction for something, then I become desirous to achieve it. So this hearing is so very, very important. And once we're attracted, then we'll chant, then we'll remember steps 2 and 3 in this process. When I hear something, I want to talk about it. And when I hear something, I have so much attraction, I can't get it out of my mind. It's so sweet, so wonderful. So like that, the more we hear about Krishna, the more we hear about his associates, the more we'll become attracted, and thus the more we will be able to practice our bhakti. So very important is this process of Shravanam. We could speak the whole session today just on this topic, but in order to make our way through, we'll carry on. But don't want to underemphasize the importance of hearing. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his discussion with Sanatana Goswami, which is described by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, describes that the bhakti is like a creeper or a vine. Bhakti lata bij. So this creeper grows from a seed, a bij. Right? So where does the seed of bhakti go? How did we get started in devotional service? Where does it start? We'll discuss this in more detail in the Nectar of Devotion discussion. But we can initially discuss that it comes by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. After wandering and wandering and wandering this material world, trying to find happiness, trying to find peace, banging our heads against the wall in frustration over and over and over again, seeing the desire in our heart, Krishna deploys his appointed spiritual masters to plant the seed of bhakti within our heart. So the pure devotee gives us this seed. It is the greatest of fortune we can have, because this seed of bhakti is the key to achieving that which we are searching for, peace and happiness. Okay? And so how to receive this seed when we meet a pure devotee of the Lord? Prabhupada says, quote, I'm just paraphrasing, hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the path of devotional service. So by hearing very patiently from a pure devotee, from the spiritual master, one then begins to practice bhakti. So we receive the seed into our heart by the process of hearing. So this creeper, this vine, is very, very delicate. It must be protected. You know, if you've grown any kind of vine plant, it can grow for years and decades, but it's still very thin, fragile. With one snip of the scissors, it is gone. Not like a tree. As a tree grows, it becomes very thick, and it becomes more strong and more difficult to knock over. But a creeper is very fragile. And the point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making is that our bhakti is fragile. We may be practicing for years and decades, but we should be very careful with it, very cautious with it. We should protect it. And he recommends we protect it with association. Like a fence you might put around a plant to protect it. What protects our bhakti lata, this creeper, is association. When we hold hands with the devotees of the Lord, we make a fence around our bhakti. And thus, we can make progress. And this bhakti lata, this creeper, when it grows, it will ultimately keep growing higher and higher and higher and higher. It will pierce the layers of the material world. It will cross into the spiritual world. And it will stop at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. And when there's a fruit that develops, that comes at the end of this creeper. And that fruit is Krishna Prema, love of God. That is the fruit of our bhakti that we are trying to cultivate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the watering process for our creeper is this chanting and hearing. And removing all of our material attachments, our anarthas, is like pulling the weeds that surround the creeper, that may consume some of the nourishment that comes to that creeper. Anyways, we don't go into that detail. That is a whole other class in and of itself. Very beautiful section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. But this is bhakti. It is a creeper. So now let's go through the 6. So first is to be enthusiastic. As our, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So even materially, we know everything takes enthusiasm. Nothing we've achieved lackadaisically. To graduate from school, to raise family, to work in a job, to earn money to buy a car. How much enthusiasm and dedication are required? So certainly in devotional service, we must also be enthusiastic. Sometimes we want to, how come it's not coming? How come it's not coming so fast? We'll see how the need to be patient. But how much enthusiasm are we putting into our devotional life? So how we can become more enthusiastic? What can fuel our enthusiasm? Right? We can understand that the more we know about Krishna, the more we know about the glories of devotional service, the more enthusiastic we'll be. Just like a diamond. If I know the value of a diamond, if I understand and have knowledge about its value, then I'll be enthusiastic to protect and keep and maybe find more diamonds. But if I don't have knowledge of a diamond, I may see it lying in the street and walk right by it, mistaking it for some ordinary stone or pebble. So like that, knowledge about Krishna, knowledge about the potency of bhakti, that fuels and enhances our enthusiasm. If we sometimes wonder, how we can be enthusiastic in our chanting. Well, our lack of enthusiasm in our chanting is due to our lack of knowledge of what the value of our chanting is. Just to bring an example, if I put a box with $1 million in front of you, and I said, if you chant your 16 rounds attentively, without yawning, without moving your body even, we'll all be able to complete it. Why? Because I have knowledge of what that $1 million can do for me. I have tangible experience of the value of that $1 million to me. And so that knowledge makes me very enthusiastic to chant. But because we may not have full knowledge of Krishna, or we are developing our knowledge, then our enthusiasm wanes. We think, oh, I'm chanting, and we become a little whimsical. So by having more knowledge, our enthusiasm will grow. And enthusiasm comes from the pleasure of service to Krishna. Right? The devotees of Krishna, they find great pleasure, experience, rasa, in serving Krishna, and that becomes the source of one's enthusiasm. Right? So what is the definition of enthusiasm? Prabhupada says that enthusiasm means to endeavor with intelligence. Very important here. That we must use our intelligence in doing our service, not just running around very, very fast like a chicken with the head cut off. No, but endeavoring with intelligence. How I can serve Krishna better. What is the means to deliver more and better service? Seeing how everything can be used for Krishna. Our home, our job, our society, our status. Krishna has given us so many facilities. So with intelligence, we see how to be enthusiastic. Right? So Prabhupada says, in all phases of life, one has to perform devotional services under the direction of the spiritual master in order to attain perfection in bhakti. Why? Because guidance of Guru helps us understand how to endeavor with intelligence. Okay? We have to use all the material, the things around us. But if we try to speculate on our own, oh, I'm going to use my BMW to serve Krishna. That's so intelligent. Well, that may be misapplied. So by the mercy of Guru, he teaches us how to use our intelligence and how to endeavor, what to do. Right? So this is the role again of Guru in being enthusiastic, not just running around or doing what we think is best in bhakti, but to inquire from Guru how I can apply the principles in my situation most appropriately. Okay? So this enthusiasm means, again, to endeavor with intelligence. And that intelligence comes from, inquiring and rendering service to Guru, to understand how to actually apply these practices of bhakti. So in summary, again, everything requires enthusiasm. So to make progress in bhakti, we must find ways to be enthusiastic. Nothing we've accomplished without enthusiasm. Now patience. Oh, what a bitter fruit. Nobody wants to be patient. So this is a nice quote. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Srila Prabhupada showed the greatest of patience. He very humbly, but very subtly speaks about this in the purport. If you read Prabhupada Lilamrita, the story of Srila Prabhupada, you will see painstaking patience by Srila Prabhupada. We see and celebrate all of the successes Srila Prabhupada had. The thousands of disciples and hundreds of temples, the great pomp and circumstance everywhere he went. But unless you really study the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, you won't see the many decades he spent very patiently waiting for results to come. He was putting forth so much effort with enthusiasm, but results were not coming initially. Literally, he was individually trying to distribute back to Godheads in the street of Delhi. And very limited results were coming, at least as we see externally. But he was very patient. I can say the most patient person we can ever see in our life. Because he was very determined to carry on the order of his spiritual master, this Vyavesayatmika Buddhi. So by doing devotional service, it requires some patience and it helps us surrender. Because the results, whether they come or not, is not our domain. That is Krishna's. So we learn to be very patient. We surrender the results to Krishna and it increases our attachment to him. Sometimes Krishna withholds results to teach us this mood of surrender. I am doing. I want it this way. Why it's not coming? So sometimes Krishna, to teach us and bring us closer to the point of surrender, will withhold results. So we must be patient in our devotional service. Now, how to develop patience? That is very important. And that brings us to the next factor in devotional service, which is confidence. When we are confident that the result will come, and we're detached from the result, no, it's Krishna's, not mine, then it's very easy to be patient. So this next process is being confident. Confidence, you see, Prabhupada speaks so much in this purport about being confident. Virtually, there's a link between all other 5 aspects of success tied to this confidence. If we are confident, it is easy to be patient. We know the result is going to come. If we are confident, it is easy to be enthusiastic because we know the result is going to come. If we are confident, we'll follow their instructions. So confidence is the core. But how to be confident? Because we always speak about being humble. Isn't confidence contrary to humility? No. We must be confident in the right things. 2 things we must be confident in. The first aspect of confidence is that Krishna's mercy will come and help me. That I am confident that I cannot do it on my own. That is the humility. But I am confident that Krishna's mercy will come because he is so sweet and so loving. He will help me make it happen. I cannot make it happen on my own, but I can be confident that Krishna's mercy will make it happen. So that is how we can be confident and humble. They are not contrary or opposing forces. And the second thing we must be confident in is that pure devotional service, this pure bhakti, is the only and best means to achieve our goal. Every single living entity has only one goal: peace and happiness. And to the extent we have confidence that bhakti is the only and best means to achieve it, then we have success. So we must acquire confidence in this. How to acquire confidence in this? The more knowledge, the more experience we have, right? That will breed confidence. So the devotee, they have so much confidence in this process of bhakti that it is a life and soul. Nothing else matters. Right? In all other paths, everything else is useless, will not yield any benefit. All these mystic siddhis, who cares? It won't give me love of God. That is the confidence one acquires and one needs to try to cultivate in order to have success in bhakti. So we know that only one thing is going to make us peaceful, and that is awakening our relationship with Krishna. So confidence in some ways is the opposite of doubt. Right? If I have doubts, if I'm not fully confident, then I'm not going to put forth my full effort. Right? I have some reservations. So you can see very kind of clearly that the more confident I am, the more enthusiastic I'll be. Just like anything, right? This confidence, like a child who's sitting at the edge of a swimming pool. If a child at the edge of the swimming pool is not so confident in their ability to swim, they'll very tentatively enter the pool. They'll dip the toe in the water, then the foot, then the leg, then the other leg, hold on to the edge. They're not confident, so they're very timid. But a child who is confident in their ability to swim will just dive in head first. So like this in bhakti, we may try it a little bit. We may be a little bit hesitant. I don't know what's going to happen, this, that. But as we experience it, our confidence builds. And when we have confidence, we can become more enthusiastic. So this confidence leads to enthusiasm. And it also leads to patience. When a student is learning, piano, it can be a very frustrating experience, right? Because child just wants to hit keys and make music. But if the child is confident that this teacher is going to show me how to make great music, then they're willing to be patient during the process of learning. So in bhakti, results may not come immediately. I put my hand in the bead bag. How come I don't have Krishna prema? Be patient. Be confident it's going to happen. Krishna's mercy will come. But be patient. And carry on very enthusiastically with your practice of bhakti. And you will have success. Right? So, how to increase our confidence or reduce our doubts? We must increase our faith. So the more knowledge I have, the more confident I'll become. The more purity I have. As I remove my anarthas in the 9 steps from Shraddha to Prem, once one becomes free of all anarthas, then one becomes nishta, fixed in devotional service. Why fixed? Because they're so confident, nothing else happens. So as we purify the heart, remove all of our anarthas, our confidence will also increase in this bhakti. So with this confidence, we can truly become patient and we can truly become enthusiastic. Patient, why? Because I know something great is coming. I know without a doubt this great fruit is coming, love of God. So I'm willing to be patient. I'm willing to wait for it even because it is so great. And the confidence makes us enthusiastic. Oh, I want to sleep a few more minutes. But because I have great confidence in this result, I'll be enthusiastic and jump out of bed and jump into my chanting. Anybody has such confidence? Right? So this confidence in the path of devotional service, it will directly lead us to Krishna prema. It gives us strength in devotional service. But we must be confident in Krishna's mercy and the path. And thus it is, and remember, with confidence in Krishna, surrender is very easy. Very easy. So, success, execution of bhakti requires confidence and patience. So this is what we are trying to cultivate in our devotion. So these 3 have a very nice tight link of enthusiasm, patience, and confidence. Next, this tat karma pravartanat, accepting the rules and regulations that develop our Krishna consciousness. And there are 2 parts to this. The first are the yamas, the don'ts. What am I supposed to avoid? The regulator principles. Neglecting the regular principles, they destroy our bhakti. They destroy our devotional service. So we must be careful to protect against the meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. And then niyamas, the do's. Following the principles of bhakti. Following these Vaidhi sadhana principles. We'll talk more about them in Nectar devotion. But it begins with our chanting of our 16 rounds. Enthusiastic chanting following that principle will yield success in a devotional service. So, in order to make success in bhakti, we must be mindful of the do's and don'ts. Be careful of the things that can destroy our bhakti, breaking the regular principles, and following the process, chanting, hearing, rendering service, reading Prabhupada's books, association, honoring Krishna Prasadam. These things, the ABCDs, that is what brings about our devotional service. Okay? Next is giving up worldly association. This nice quote. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. Giving up the association of undesirable people. Who is undesirable? Someone who has body odor? Someone who is very ugly? No. That is not undesirable. Undesirable people are people who have undesirable goals, trying to enjoy the material world, trying to just eat nicely and sleep nicely, mate nicely and defend nicely. Not as desirable. And the danger of this association we spoke about last week, it contaminates our consciousness. It fuels our greed. It fuels our atyahara and prayasas. Right? So this undesirable nature. And we see Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very emphatically warning us against the dangers of Mayavad philosophy. Why it's so dangerous? Because it will poison our heart. And in today's society, unfortunately, there's so much spirituality being propagated with this impersonal belief that you can become God. We are all God, merge into God. And it is so dangerous for us. We sometimes wonder, what is the harm in hearing this program or hearing this idea or hearing this? Well, what is the harm is that we may not see the danger. And Prabhupada says, just like milk touched by the lips of a serpent has a very poisonous effect. When you drink that milk, it's very poisonous for us. You won't see the poison in that milk, but the effect is very deadly for us. Similarly, when we hear from these personalities, it has a very poisonous effect on our bhakti. It can destroy it. So we should be very careful who we associate with. Right? Narottam Das Thakur recommends to live in the company of devotees and execute the regulative principles laid down by previous acharyas. Hanging out with devotees, it's easy to practice bhakti. Right? So this association, again, it means to be inspired by. It doesn't mean we're not going to interact with people who have other goals, that we won't have some, dialogues with them. Of course, in practical life, we're going to interact. But don't become inspired by. Be careful the amount of interaction required. Minimize it to a point necessary for achieving our simple life. So minimize the worldly association to the point of maintaining our simple life, and maximize our association with devotees of the Lord to achieve the higher thinking purpose of bhakti. And we heard in the lecture that, Srila Prabhupada was asked by one devotee, how I can be more serious in my devotional life. And he said, well, if you want to be a drunkard, associate with drunkards, people who are good at drinking. If you want to be a devotee, associate with devotees. Associate those who are good in practicing bhakti. So this association can carry us forward very nicely. And again, it means to be inspired by. Don't take this to the extreme, I can't touch or talk to anyone who's not a devotee. But we minimize those interactions. We do those for the purpose of our different responsibilities. And we increase and maximize our devotee association. Putting that fence around our bhakti lata bij, that creeper. Okay? And finally, following in the footsteps. Sato vritihi. Following in the footsteps of our previous acharyas. And what does it mean? It means our acharyas do one thing. They are fully engaged in devotional service. 24 hours a day, even while taking rest, they're meditating on how to serve Krishna. So the footsteps we are trying to follow is how we can engage ourselves 100% of the time in devotional service. We can see how Srila Prabhupada read his pastimes, how he engaged every moment, every opportunity as a chance to serve. And this following is very important for us. It's very difficult also because our false ego. Our ego, lack of humility, leads to think, I know. I want to do it this way. But we cannot be whimsical or speculative about how to do bhakti. We don't know how to do devotional service. How did we even learn about bhakti? By hearing, by following. So the practice of bhakti also requires this humility. But again, due to our false ego, when we hear the famous 3 letters follow it, but. Oji, Mataji, do this, but I can. But I want to do this. So we want to remove the buts and just follow. And it is a very powerful process of devotional service. And the lack of willingness to follow leads to our downfall. And unfortunately, the more we progress in bhakti, sometimes the harder it is for us to follow. Initially in bhakti, when we are new, it's easy to follow because we don't know anything. But as we so-called begin to learn things, and we begin to become more experienced, we think now, now I know, I don't need to follow. But the further we go in bhakti, the more we need to follow. The more we need to adhere to our acharyas. Because the more dangerous, the higher you go, the farther you have to fall. So following early on is easy. But as we progress, sometimes this tendency develops. I now know. So be very careful not to let that seep into our consciousness. Because as we see Srila Prabhupada, he followed his spiritual master to a T. He was Bhakti Vedanta. He had mastered the Vedanta. Yet in his Markina Bhagavata Dharma, he said, I have nothing. I'm just waiting for your instructions. Okay. So this guaranteed success of bhakti. This is the power of pure devotional service. What does pure devotional service mean? It means pure, no motives. Nothing else is in the bhakti. My only purpose of bhakti is to please Krishna. And this pure devotional service, it's so far superior to this meditation or speculation, these jnanic processes, yogic, mystic processes. Bhakti is an active cultivation. It's an activity. It's an activity of love. It's utilizing our senses and everything around us in the loving relationship with Krishna. So spirituality is not an idle meditation or some, idle speculation. It is an active engagement. And very simply, we know, just knowing about somebody, having knowledge about someone, having jnana is one thing. But then acting in that knowledge, acting in that relationship is the full result of knowledge. So knowledge is good, but we turn it into activity, applied knowledge. Jnana into vigyan. That is bhakti. So just acquiring knowledge is not sufficient. It must turn into an activity, an knowledge-based activity, guided by Guru. And this puts an end to all of our mundane material activities. Okay? So, Srila Prabhupada translates bhakti as devotional service. Bhakti means love. And love is expressed by service. So devotional service, we express our devotion to Krishna through service. And how do we know bhakti is so pure and so powerful? Because Prabhupada says that bhakti is so powerful, one is dragged to ultimate success. All we have to do is start. Wow, what is more motivating? What can give us more confidence? Prabhupada says, just start and you'll be dragged to success, just like a giant boulder. If it's at the top of the hill, to take it to the bottom of the hill might seem arduous. But all we have to do is start the ball rolling. Just start it. And that will carry us forward into ultimate success. So when we are sometimes feeling down, read that statement. Prabhupada says, one will ultimately be dragged to success. It's very, very sweet and powerful. Prabhupada says that he quotes the verse, there's no loss or diminution. Whatever we do in bhakti, it is eternally ours. Nobody can take it away. Whatever we put into our Bank of America or PNC bank account is temporarily ours. It's gone with the end of this life. But our bhakti account, our bhakti bank account is eternal. Whatever deposits we make, we never lose. So is it so difficult to be enthusiastic then? It is eternally ours. What greater motivation we can have. This dragging to success. What greater motivation we can have to then help somebody else start their bhakti. By just giving them the holy names, giving them some prasadam, giving a book, engaging in service, something to start. All we have to do is help them start. And Krishna takes care of the rest. All the time. So even if they push back a little bit, no, some value is there. So all the material gains and philosophical speculation, mystic siddhis, they're contrary. They're opposed to bhakti. Why? Because they yield temporary results and they will ultimately lead to our frustration. Whereas bhakti, eternal results, and you'll be dragged to success of an eternal life of peace and happiness. So this process of devotional service is so powerful. And we practice it by following these 6 things. Being enthusiastic, endeavoring confidently, being patient, following the principles, avoiding bad association, following in his footsteps. Prabhupada established ISKCON. Why? To give us an opportunity to hear about Krishna so that we can become confident and enthusiastic and patient in our practice. He established a Sunday feast with a Bhagavad Gita class. Why? So that we may hear. Many will come to Sunday feast, after the lecture for the feast. But the real feast is the feast of the ears. Hearing Krishna Katha. The intensity of our desire to hear is a measure of our success in bhakti. How enthusiastic am I to hear? That is the purpose of ISKCON. To give us this chance to associate and hear about the practice of devotional service. To be able to render service together with everyone. It's so sweet. Right? So if we enthusiastically execute the regular process of devotional service under the guidance of Guru, patience will come, confidence will come. It's all tied together and will become great success. And so in page 38 of the book, Prabhupada says, I just wanted to read this statement. It's very sweet. That he says, once we have Krishna's mercy and come under his protection of his supreme potency, they should not deviate from the path of devotional service and to take to some other path. Okay? So once we've come under the protection, since all the devotees, Lord, are under the protection of his supreme potency, should not deviate from the path. Confidence, this is the only and best means. So this is verse 3 of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, again, to review the overview of where we are going with this Nectar of Instruction, the first 3 verses are the foundation for advancement in bhakti. Controlling the 6 urges, avoiding the 6 impediments or obstacles in our devotional service, and understanding the 6 critical success factors, what it is that will fuel my success. And then now we'll move into the second section of this nectar of instruction. The next 3 verses, 4, 5, and 6, will speak to us about how to engage in association with devotees, how to conduct sadhu sangha. Very, very important in our devotional life. And then we'll carry on in verses 7 and 8 about how to engage the tongue and mind in chanting of Krishna. And we'll conclude with the last 3 verses on understanding who are the best devotees and where is the best place to practice bhakti. So this verse gives us, when we are feeling, oh, I'm not making some progress, how I can become more successful. Find one of these factors and work on them. Be a little more enthusiastic. Build our confidence. Be patient. Follow the principles more strictly. Avoid association. Follow the footsteps. Use these as levers to make us successful in bhakti. So if we are feeling like we are not progressing like we want, search out some of these that we can increase, and search out the 6 detriments, the 6 impediments, and minimize them. So that is today's presentation. Any questions, comments, discussion we can have?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah, I was wanting to, first of all, wonderful lecture Prabhuji. Thank you so much for that. And towards last part, you were mentioning that once the process of bhakti is started, then you are dragged into the success of it. Now, I was just wondering, once we start even the process of bhakti, our success is actually dependent on the 6 principles which have been mentioned, right? The enthusiasm, the confidence, the patience. If those principles are lacking, or 1 or 2 are lacking, the devotional service, the success would be halted. So one cannot be, how can one be actually guaranteed that success?
Yes.
Dragged into success.
Yes.
That one.
Yes. So don't use that as a license to be lazy or whimsical in our practice of devotional service. So use that statement as a means to be confident in the practice of bhakti. But understand, it is still up to us as the individual. Krishna will not force us into bhakti. What Prabhupada means by that statement is that bhakti is so powerful that we should have confidence that no matter what obstacles we may have, no matter what conditioning, what impurities we may have, we can be dragged to success. But we must follow the process. And that is up to us. So we cannot say, oh no, I'm guaranteed success, so I can go do whatever I want. No, it is not a license to act whimsically, but it is a means to help give us some faith in the confidence. And in the Nectar of Devotion, we'll see how, because when we start bhakti, what happens? So when bhakti starts, we do some devotional service to Krishna. There is a reciprocation, a response from Krishna. It is not a one-way activity. There is a response. That response is an experience of sweetness and happiness that we acquire from that bhakti. So from that sweetness, what happens is we do more bhakti. It inspires us to do it one more time. When we do bhakti one more time, now we get another response. And that response fuels us again to do more bhakti. And like that, that cycle then continues. And it is a virtuous, self-fulfilling prophecy. So that is the point of, once we start, we'll be pulled to success. But we have to make sure we follow the process. Otherwise, we can stop that process as well by committing offenses, by not following the regular principles. We can stop that progress. So that is the point to understand from this.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the question. Very important clarification. Very, very important. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have one doubt from that verse 3. So what is night for all beings is the time of awakening for all the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective stage. What we have to understand from this view.
Yeah, the nice verse. This is the 69th verse of the second chapter. I've given a whole class on this if you want to find it on Facebook. But the short answer is that what we find is that, the devotees, what they do is completely opposite to what the materialists do. The materialists wonder, you devotees, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't gamble, what do you do? And to the devotees, they wonder, what do? You don't chant, you don't serve the Lord, you're not honoring prasadam, you're not dancing with the Lord. What do you do? So the idea is that, the point is that what is night for the devotee means that they sleep to all the materialist activities. They find the materialist activities very boring. But the materialist finds the activities of the devotee to be very boring. So what is night for one is day for the other. It means we have opposite interests. So the question we have to figure out is, who is right? Okay? And we'll see this. Why, as we begin to practice devotional service, we find ourselves kind of not willingly, but just happens by looking at the relationships we had, we just start finding these are boring. They used to be so fulfilling. And now they're not the same anymore. Because our tastes have changed, our tastes have elevated. So this idea is just Krishna is reminding us that, again, there's a much more detailed explanation you can see, but that is the synopsis of this verse, that the materialists and the spirituals have very differing perspectives. What is day for one is night for the other, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you, Hare Krishna. I also need one more clarification from you in that verse 3.
Yeah.
In the course of traversing the universal creation of Brahma, some fortunate soul may receive the seed of Bhakti Lata, the tree from devotional service. This is all by the grace of Guru and Krishna. What we have to understand from this statement?
We have to understand this statement very, very deeply, actually. That's a good question, great question. And we'll discuss this even more in Nectar of Devotion. But what means is, we have been traversing the material world for millions and millions and millions of lifetimes. Somehow, we have come fortunate to come into contact with a devotee and have received the seed of bhakti. How fortunate it is, how rare it is. The rarity of the living entity coming in contact with a devotee is a pure devotee is compared to the probability of that turtle in the water who is coming up for air. And as soon as that turtle comes up for air and crosses the plane of water in a giant ocean, there happens to be a log coming over where the turtle is going to break the plane of water. Not only is the log there, that there's a hole in that log. And that hole is the exact size of the head of the turtle. And that turtle breaks its plane of the water and its head gets stuck in this log. The probability of that happening in a vast ocean is compared to the probability of the spirit soul coming in contact with a pure devotee. So now when we have had that fortune, we can appreciate how rare it is. So for millions of lifetimes we've been trying, and somehow all of us have been given this great fortune to have this seed of bhakti planted, and now it is up to us to nourish it and water it, help it grow. Right? So this is and our mission, Srila Prabhupada's mission, was to give this fortune to others, to give this rarest of rarest fortune to everyone. And that was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ultimate mission. That's what we understand. It's okay?
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you for clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I had a question. When we say that we have to do the bhakti with confidence in Krishna, so when we say confidence, it is confidence in Krishna or it should be confidence in our bhakti? And second thing, when there is some impediment coming in the path of our rendering any devotional service, should we just neglect or should we just not look at that problem which is coming and just continue our service?
Yeah. So, very importantly, confidence is not confidence in our bhakti. What do we have to be confident in? It is a creeper. It can be destroyed in a moment. So our confidence should be in the two things again. One, the mercy of Krishna. That Krishna will help me in the process of devotional service. And two, that the process of bhakti is the only thing that can give me success in life. The only thing. So I should be confident in those two things, not confidence in myself. We must be extraordinarily humble that I don't even know how to practice bhakti. But others do, and I can learn from them. I can follow in their footsteps. So humility and confidence go hand in hand. They are not opposing. So when impediments come in devotional service, we have to be enthusiastic, remain enthusiastic. Obstacles are going to come. Be enthusiastic, but remember, it means endeavor with intelligence. If somebody is in the way of our bhakti, we don't, push them aside to do our devotional service, that's not intelligent. If somebody is not being, cooperative in our devotional service, well, then we have to inquire how to build that cooperation, how to inspire cooperation. Not how do I trample this person so that I can get to my service. That will not please Krishna. Right? So, and if impediments come, it's not that, okay, well, that's Krishna's desire, I have nothing to do. No, we must be intelligent, endeavor to try to overcome. Prabhupada faced so many impediments, so many obstacles. Whatever obstacles we have, you put them up against the obstacles Prabhupada faced, and then you decide who had real obstacles. Prabhupada's obstacles are beyond comprehension. So the obstacles require enthusiasm to overcome them. And the obstacles are our greatest blessing. They are for our purification. They enhance our mood of surrender. Because in order to overcome an obstacle, it requires humility. It requires patience, tolerance, forgiveness, compassion, love, all these things that we need to be able to awaken our love for Krishna. They come through the obstacles. And that's why Krishna, the more we progress in devotional service, the more obstacles we get. Because it's good for us. It's beneficial for us. And the devotee relishes those obstacles. They relish those challenges because they know it will make them more sincere, more pure in their practice of bhakti. So that's how we can approach them. Not with confidence in ourselves, but confidence in the process of bhakti and confidence in Krishna's mercy. And viewing the obstacles as Krishna's mercy and plan, as an opportunity to remain enthusiastic and do so with intelligence. So, it's okay, Mataji? Thank you, Mataji. Anything else? Hare Krishna? Yes, Mataji?
Yeah, I just don't know what does it mean when they say impersonal jnana?
Impersonal jnana. So the impersonal jnana, there is knowledge being propagated that Krishna has only an impersonal form. He is not a person. That he is an energy. And the context of that is that the Mayavad philosophers, what they say is that Krishna, when he appears in the material world, he assumes a temporary form like we do. We have a temporary body. But his ultimate feature is impersonal. And what that allows one to do then is to propagate a philosophy that we all can become God. We can merge into God, because God isn't a person. He's a blob of energy. So we all can become God. And that sounds very sweet to a person without knowledge. But it has no basis, because Krishna has an impersonal form, but he also has a personal form, which is the ultimate form. Brahman, Paramatma, and then Bhagavan, the three stages of realizing Krishna. So the impersonal jnana is knowledge about Krishna's impersonal feature, which is only a subset of the total. But the Mayavadis will set aside all else and focus just on that impersonal. They'll deny the rest and mislead one to a consciousness. And what that philosophy, why it's so dangerous for us, because it leads us to envy Krishna. Because we don't want to serve Krishna, we want to be Krishna. And that's what's led us here in the first place. So it leads to a very dangerous. And the problem with this philosophy is it's very subtle. It's very subtle, like that poison in the bowl of milk. You don't see it. It's subtle. But the effect is extraordinarily dangerous. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warns us to be extraordinarily careful, never to hear this impersonal jnana, because it can destroy your bhakti in a millisecond. And I have seen it firsthand. Very seasoned devotees, pujaris, serving, destroyed by this impersonal philosophy. So that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warns us to be very, very careful. Sometimes people criticize or wonder why we have to speak so negatively about this impersonal. It is not negatively. If there's a snake in the garden and you tell your child, stay away, stay away, stay away from that snake, that is not criticizing the snake. It is protecting your child from danger. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Prabhupada are saying, stay away, stay away, stay away, it is to protect one from danger. So, it's okay?
Prabhuji, thank you. I have one more question. Can I continue
Yeah.
on someone else?
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
I just read a sentence in the verse which says, contamination by the three modes of material nature. I didn't get what is that, the three modes of material nature.
Yeah, so this is the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness. So the three modes of material nature attract us to the various, fruits of the material world. And they lead us to chasing wealth and money and, sex life and drugs and intoxication and all kinds of different activities. So they contaminate the heart from its pure state. Remember, the pure state of consciousness is we have no attraction for anything but Krishna. But now we have diluted it so much so that attraction for Krishna is actually lost. And that happens by when we interact with these three modes of material nature. So just like, if I come in contact with a garbage dump, I become contaminated. I become soiled. I may smell, I may get some stains on my clothes. Like that, when the living entity comes in contact with nature, it becomes conditioned or covered. The soul is always pure. It is not contaminated, but it becomes covered by these impurities. So that is what it means by that.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Somebody was speaking earlier also.
There's a question
Hare Krishna,
online. Oh,
Yes?
okay.
I like the way you explain the humility and confidence part. I wanted to see if you can comment on if there's anything like too much of humility, or which can lead to maybe low self-esteem, or how is low self-esteem, humility, and connected or tagged to confidence in any way? I wanted to see if there's any difference.
Very nice question, actually. So, there is no such thing as too much humility. When we become pure in our humility, then we have Krishna Prema. The ingredient of Krishna Prema is humility. So there's no such thing as too much humility. But humility does not mean low self-esteem. What humility means, Prabhupada explains, is to have an accurate understanding of who I am. That's it. And who am I? I am an infinitesimal, tiny spark of the Supreme Lord. So we can be proud, confident that I am a spark of the Supreme Lord. But not to have false ego, to think I'm something great, I'm something independent, I am something this or that. So when we have low self-esteem, that is a material affliction. It is not a spiritual affliction. Because the devotee thinks that is the greatest position to be in, is to be a tiny spark fully dependent on Krishna. You know, what better position is for a child in the arms of mother? Fully nourished, fully cared, warm, cozy, and comfortable. The baby doesn't think, oh, I want to get my own food. No. Fully dependent. So the devotee, with great humility, knowing its dependence on Krishna, is in the most sweetest place, most confident place. Because he knows Krishna will protect me. I know his mercy will come. Fully surrendered. So that is humility. Low self-esteem means that I don't know who I am. It means I am bad, I am weak, I am unintelligent, I am ugly, whatever aspect of low. No, you are not none of those. Your body is that. You are pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. You are amazing. You have incredible qualities and potency and energy. But only when it is connected to Krishna. So low self-esteem is associated with our body, a bodily conception. But when I have spiritual conception, there's no scope for low self-esteem. Why? Because we are great. We are extraordinary. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna. But we are only great and extraordinary when we are connected in devotional service to Krishna. So, low self-esteem is not humility. Right? So they are distinct and different. Is that okay, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
You have another question?
There's a question online from Jita Nandawani. I have one question. If some devotee is interested in any particular service because he is getting praised for that service, it is niyamagraha, how to preach to them.
So the question is, if we're doing some service and we're getting some praise and adoration for such service, and then we become attached to that service because of that praise and adoration, how to overcome that? It's a great question, and it's something we should be very mindful of and very careful of. Because when we do service for our own pleasure, then it's not pure devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmani navritam. No desires. The only desire is to please Krishna. So the motive for my devotional service should not be the adoration I get. The motive for my bhakti should be to please Krishna. So when we find this happening, we should force ourselves into situations where that praise will not come. Put ourselves in situations that will protect us, insulate us from that. It is the devotee's responsibility or obligation to glorify and to acknowledge the service of others. But it is our responsibility to deflect that and to glorify the service of others. So, you may be doing something great in service, but we have to remember, we are not doing anything great in service. Krishna is allowing us to be an instrument in his plan. Whatever I'm doing, it is because he is giving me the facilities. And He is allowing me to serve. So if some adoration comes, we should quickly say, it is Krishna's greatness. Krishna is great. I am not great. If there's anything great about me, it is only because of Krishna. So the mood we should cultivate is that we should know where that greatness is coming from. Again, it's the devotees, as devotees, we should acknowledge and see the contribution of others. But on the receiving end of that, we should understand it is Krishna that is great. It is Guru that is great. And so we can be very, enthusiastic about that. And one other practical piece of advice is that, when we are doing service, particularly when we have, been in service for some time, we should intentionally do some services that we don't like to do. Why? Because when we do services we don't like to do, it helps us develop the mood of the service is for Krishna, not for my likes and dislikes. Initially, it's nice to do services we like because that helps us start in bhakti. But the more we do devotional service, start to, do some. Doesn't mean you abandon the things you like. Don't take it to the other. But just do some service that, is not so pleasing to you. Whatever it may be. Because that will help us maintain and develop that consciousness that the service is not for my pleasure or displeasure. It is for Krishna's pleasure. And one specific recommendation, particularly if you have if you're doing very illustrious service like deity worship, cooking for Krishna, those so-called glorious services, we put labels on them. Krishna doesn't put those labels on them, by the way. So when we have those services, you put yourself in a position to do some very menial services. Go clean a toilet. Go take out a bag of trash. Go pick up after somebody. Something very menial. Because it allows us to try to remain detached from those other services. So there's just some practical, advice and tips is that, how not to become attached to the glory of the service. We should be attached to the pleasure of Krishna. That is it. Any other questions or discussion?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Roji.
Just want to comment the class is really nice. Because everything is kind of stitched. But then, when we hear this theoretically, I think it's sounding very positive. But where, get the lag is when we do this in practical things. Of course, these are all looks like a very heavy subject to take this immediately into our practical life. So how can we, do this, take this and kind of check ourselves to progress in it?
Well, if we're not making progress, go back to the prior verse. What impediments are prominent in my life? You'll find them. You'll find them very clearly. If we choose to be introspective and think about it, because these are facts, so if they seem theoretical and they're not being experienced practically, it means that there must be some impediments that are present in my life. Okay, so let me work on them. Well, if I have all 6 impediments, okay, well, work on one of them. It's about progressive progress, step by step. You're not going to make progress overnight completely. So work on something. I'm doing too much prajalpa. I'm wasting my time talking on the phone to random people and just doing all kinds of okay, I'm going to limit my prajalpa. My atyahara, I still can't give up my, my desire for indulging in too much pizza. Okay, but I'll minimize my prajalpa. Find something that we are doing on the impediment side and start to minimize it. And you'll see a tangible, positive experience in your bhakti. And the other side of it is increase some of the success factors. Let me build my confidence. I should read more. Prove it to myself. Okay, you know what? I'm a doubtful person. I am someone who confidence is not for me. Well, then let me do tat karma pravartanat. Let me, I can follow the regular principles and I can do that. Or let me be enthusiastic. Something. Pick somebody's success factors and increase them. Minimize the impediments and increase. That is the reason that experience is not coming. The only reason. Okay? So, just find some ways to apply. Because again, none of this knowledge is theoretical. This is all practical. This is experiential based, practical knowledge. This is not theory. If this was theory, we're all wasting our time. I hate to be so blunt, but that's the fact. This is about application. Today, how can I do a little less atyahara? Or prajalpa? Or sangha, jana sangha? Something. And how can I do a little more of utsaha, nischaya, daryat? Or tat karma pravartanat? Or sangha tyagat? Or satoviti? Right? Find something and you'll see. And if it's not happening, you have to inquire deeper. Why is it not happening? Ask. Something is wrong in the formula. Make sense?
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu, for your advice.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. It's a very practical question. Anything else? Okay, so we'll end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.